ESPN has some crazy predictions for the Cleveland Browns for the 2025 NFL season. We're going to get into all of that. We'll be reacting to the odds they have the Browns to make the playoffs, their projected win total, the Browns' biggest strength and their biggest worry, also a little fantasy football insight in regards to Cleveland's players, and finally, a bold prediction that you're not going to want to miss. Let's get right into the video. Welcome into the Browns Report, everybody. I am your host, Joey O'Donohue, and just before we get to ESPN's craziness, make sure you are subscribed. We are pushing to 51,000. We're only 361 subs away, so go ahead, hit that subscribe button if you want daily Browns news, content, and analysis all season long. And without further ado, let's get into ESPN's 2025 preview for the Cleveland Browns. So the experts are saying that the playoff chances for Cleveland are 8.5%. That's low. AFC North champions, 2.3%. Excuse me? Well, all right, actually, that one's going to be tough to win. Projected wins, they got Cleveland at 6. Strength of schedule, Browns have the 13th hardest schedule in the NFL. And finally, you saw their record last season was 3-14. So I get that the AFC North title odds are going to be slim. The playoff odds, I think we could be a little bit higher than 8%, but they've got 8.5. Projected wins is honestly a little bit generous from ESPN, who has been sleeping on the team all season long. But they have the Browns as their 30th ranked team. I mean, there's some bad teams they're putting ahead of Cleveland, right? First of all, the Carolina Panthers, they say, are better than the Cleveland Browns. They say both New York teams are better than the Cleveland Browns in the power rankings, the Jets and the Giants. The Indianapolis Colts with who? Daniel Jones as their quarterback? And Tennessee Titans, who were worse than the Browns last year. All these teams that ESPN is projecting to be better than Cleveland by the end of the season. And I say, watch Cleveland finish better than all 5 of those. I mean, come on. We're forgetting this is a different Browns team. The amount of rookies they have brought in is a lot more than a lot of other teams, especially impact rookies. Rookies that we're going to see in the lineup right away. So I think Cleveland is going to be better than a lot of the teams that ESPN had ahead of them on the power rankings. 6 wins, though, is somewhat fair enough, and I do think the Browns' defense is going to be what keeps them in these games. Cleveland's going to be battling a lot of teams closely because of how good their defense is going to be, because of the rookies they brought in, because of arguably the best player in all of the NFL, Myles Garrett, rookie, Mason Graham coming in with him, and that at least is something that ESPN got right. They said Cleveland's biggest strength this year is their D-line, that defensive line. Daniel Oyefusi gave a quote on it, said Myles Garrett is a year removed from being named Defensive Player of the Year, deservedly so, by the way, and the Browns have multiple players equipped to take advantage of one-on-one opportunities as he commands extra attention. Free agent signing Maliek Collins has the 7th highest pass rush win rate as an interior defender last season, and Mason Graham, the number 5 pick, had 9 sacks in 3 seasons with Michigan. Cleveland's D-line is not only stacked when you look at the starters, but there's a lot of depth in that room. Isaiah McGuire should get in and get reps. Aiden Huntington, who earned his way onto the 53-man, was a beast in preseason. Cleveland's deep, and those starters are going to wreak havoc on opposing NFL quarterbacks. So, as I said, defense is going to keep the Browns in the games and get them a few extra wins. But I want to know from you guys in the comments, what would you rate the Browns' defensive line? Scale it 1 to 10. Give me a number in the comments. Just that part of the defense. How good is the D-line? I do think ESPN got that one right. That's Cleveland's biggest strength. But ESPN wasn't done projecting Cleveland Browns' futures. They said that the biggest concern for Cleveland was the quarterback room. It's been the story of the offseason. And quite frankly, it's been the story of Cleveland's entire franchise, the search for a quarterback. Just last season, Browns quarterbacks had a 35 QBR, worst in the NFL. That is pretty abysmal. They started a league-high 40 different passers since 1999, another absurd number. And finally, Cleveland's had 0 Pro Bowl quarterbacks since Derek Anderson in 2007. That's the longest active NFL drought. This has always been the kryptonite for the Cleveland Browns. They've had good players around the QB position, but they've had to cycle through and through and through to find the guy. This season, They've got 3 quarterbacks in contention to play. We know Joe Flacco will be the starter, and I bet we see all 3 of them. I bet Shador gets in by the end of the season. I bet Gabriel comes in, whether it's due to injury to Flacco, whether it's due to the Browns aren't winning games. I don't know, but I do know that I think we'll see all 3 of them at some point as the Browns look to find the quarterback of the future. In fact, over the weekend, Kevin Stefanski was at the Texas-Ohio State game on Saturday. Was he scouting Arch Manning? I mean, what are we doing, Browns? We were supposed to be locked in on the quarterbacks we got. We drafted 2 rookies. Arch did not play well at all in that game, by the way, if we're calling it how it is. Also, there's a lot of good draft picks on Ohio State that maybe Cleveland was looking at, and no problem with them doing their due diligence at all. But I don't want to be thinking about next year's draft already. Come on, we got some promise this season. So a little bit interesting that Stefanski was at the game. But as I said, I think we'll see all 3 quarterbacks this season, and I think it's a fair concern to have if you're going to point to a position group on the Browns that has uncertainty, right? 40-year-old guy leading the team, and then 2 rookies that Oyefusi said are not NFL ready at the moment. We'll see how they fare. But one more piece of information ESPN gave us about the Browns was a little fantasy football advice with Cleveland players. They named a Browns player that's going to have a breakout season. But speaking of player projections, I'm super excited to tell you about this week's sponsor. This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. You and I make decisions every day, but on PrizePicks, being right can get you paid. Don't miss any of the excitement this season on PrizePicks, where it's good to be right. Honestly, I'm just so ready for football to be back on Sundays. It feels like all is right in the world, and I'm big into daily fantasy with PrizePicks. I'm obsessed with it because it makes all games more entertaining, and before the Browns play, I lock in on all my players in my lineup and their player projections. PrizePicks is simple to play. Just pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections. If you get your picks right, you could cash in. PrizePicks is also the best way to get action on sports in more than 40-plus states, including California, Texas, and Georgia. And I'm in Texas, so I can finally make some player projections, and I've got one that PrizePicks is giving us all for free. It's a deal where you can get Dak Prescott more than half a passing yard. Sounds like a lock to me. Also, I've got David Njoku more than 49.5 receiving yards, and Jerome Ford more than a half a touchdown. I think with Cleveland not having many running backs back there, Ford is guaranteed to get one across the goal line. Download the app today and use code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks. It's good to be right. ESPN says Cedric Tillman will be the breakout fantasy player for all you ESPN fantasy players out there. Tillman, a 6'3", 215-pound receiver. Remember, he was a third-round pick for the Browns as well. And Tillman started to get hot towards the end of last season, where he had 18.8 fantasy points from week 7 to 11. He was also being targeted at a much higher volume, 8.8 targets, before he got the concussion that ended his season. Tillman started to get hot, and now he's the absolute wide receiver 2 in Cleveland's room. So I absolutely love that pick. It's someone that I don't think a lot of people are talking about. Get ready for a breakout season from Cedric Tillman. I love that pick. I also would draft one of our RBs in fantasy. Once Cleveland has their RB1 figured out, it's going to be good for fantasy players. I personally drafted Quinshon Judkins. I think when he finally gets to play and take over that running back role, he's going to be explosive, and the Cleveland running backs have had a lot of success in the past. You look at Nick Chubb, you look at Kareem Hunt. Heck, even Jerome Ford has good games, and he'll be the RB1 going forward. So whoever Cleveland has as their RB1, we should know that in about a few weeks. Go ahead, fire him up in fantasy. But I want to know from the people, my Browns fans, faithfuls, comment a Browns player that you think is going to have a breakout season. Anyone. You could say Jerry Jeudy, who had the breakout last year. You could say Njoku. Who do you think is going to have a really great season for the Browns? Comment a player. I'll go through and look at all the names you put. ESPN also has a bold prediction for the Cleveland Browns. This one's interesting, so buckle up. ESPN's Seth Walder says that the Browns will trade Joel Bitonio or Wyatt Teller in season. It makes too much sense. They are veteran guards, each in the last of their contracts on a team likely going nowhere, excuse you, Seth, in 2025. Plus, the Browns have Tevin Jenkins waiting in the wings. Unfortunately, I could actually see this happening just because of how old they're getting, Bitonio and Teller, and have dealt with some injuries in years prior. But it would be such a crushing blow to the Browns' offensive line if they do that. And I don't think it's a good time to be doing so when you have so many rookies on the roster and you're trying to build and figure things out. I mean, O-line is imperative for the Browns. It's one of the most imperative parts of football as a whole, but especially Cleveland this season. They have old and rookie quarterbacks. There's a 40-year-old and young 20-year-olds. There's no in between. Both of those quarterbacks are going to need protection up front to get any sort of comfort level as they start to get their groove. Flacco hasn't had a full season in years in the NFL. Also, running back uncertainty. I talked about Quinshon Judkins not having a deal yet. Well, they're going to be using a few different backs throughout the year. Ford, Sampson, Judkins, maybe even Raheem Sanders, who they just claimed recently off the Chargers squad. So I think more now than ever, you're going to need a strong offensive line. That's what makes a running back. Remember, when Nick Chubb was running like the best runner in the league, Cleveland had one of the best offensive lines in the league. When Ezekiel Elliott had one of his best years as a rookie, the Cowboys had one of the best offensive lines in the league. Same with Le'Veon Bell. That's what makes a good running back a star running back. Finally, AFC North pass rushers are elite. Trey Hendrickson led the league in sacks last year. The Ravens D-line, always stacked. The Steelers, TJ Watt, Patrick Queen, you name it. Cameron Hayward. There's guys that can get to the quarterback. Cleveland's going to need a strong offensive line to compete in that division. So I don't think they should go ahead and trade Bitonio, but I could see it happening, and I would be sad about it myself. Well, that's everything that ESPN had to project for the Cleveland Browns 2025 NFL season. Let me know what you think about it in the comments, and we'll be here to cover every single aspect of it all season long. So thank you so much for watching. Go ahead, drop me a follow on X at Joey070. We can talk more Browns football on there, and we will see you shortly here on the Browns Report.